What is up, everybody? Welcome. I am your humble host, Pete Rogers, and I am joined by just one of my nerds. My nerds. They are mine. You are mine. It's I pull you out of the closet just in order to do these podcasts. No, it is the working girl, Jordan Smith. Jordan, how you doing?
Doing well. Feels great to be out and active, not just for the podcast and nerding out, but we were just discussing off pod about how great the weather's been, and it's really making me itch for good football.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a basketball tank on. It is after, if you have been in the Midwest, if you live in the Midwest and you've been struggling through the 6 month long winter that we've had this week, it feels like the week that everyone's getting good weather. I'm sure it'll come back to bite us in the ass and we'll have like a 40-degree day. But today was 80. I basked in it. It was glorious, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And what we also thoroughly enjoyed, Jordan, was a little NFL news, a little something. We're leading up to the draft. Most of the big free agent signings have already occurred, but we did get Odell Beckham finally finding a team coming off of his ACL surgery, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. Despite the fact that Aaron Rodgers told the Jets that he needed Odell on the Jets, New York dropped the ball on that one. And instead, it was the Baltimore Ravens who ended up signing Odell to a pretty, and I'm going to try to bring it up right now, a pretty nice contract, if I do recall, something like 15 mil around that dollar amount, which is a solid number for a guy who hasn't played in a year, but looked very good and very productive and flashing the kind of Odell of old during the Rams playoff Super Bowl run. Jordan, what is your initial thoughts on just this move football wise, but then also obviously fantasy football wise?
Yeah, so football wise, you touched on it. The contract is pretty decent. It's just a 1 year, essentially a 1 year proof it deal for a guy who kind of does need to prove it. This is his age 30 season, so we'll need to have a good season out of him. It is 18 million. I think he's base salary is only like 1.25 mil or something, and it's like a $13 million signing bonus, and then like an extra 3.4 mil in incentives or something like that. So there's a lot of money on the table for Odell to still earn. You alluded to it before too. This is kind of a tale of two quarterbacks right now. Is that this is all it kind of has dovetailed out of the QB drama from this season is the Aaron Rodgers and the Lamar Jackson and what's going to happen. And I think with this signing, we might be able to start thinking about putting a bow on one of these QB controversies. And the idea is that Lamar, I don't know if this is confirmed, but I had seen it and I'd heard it that Lamar basically recruited Odell to Baltimore. Odell, when he signed, he posted a picture on Instagram of his son in a Lamar Jackson uniform. So you know that he probably isn't signing there unless he knows the quarterback situation is going to be sorting itself out. So I think that's going to be the way this leans. And then from a fantasy aspect, I don't know what to expect out of Odell. We have to make sure he can stay on the field for 16 games. This helps them with some flexibility at the wide receiver spot. Like Rashad Bateman, still all the love for Rashad Bateman. I think this can help open him up a little bit more than their other free agent signing, which was just Nelson Aguilar, like as your wide receiver too. That's not really what you want. And I think the Ravens have really made like as one of the more model franchises in the NFL, when they do sign some free agents, it's usually not as splashy as this, with the exception of like trading for Marcus Peters or something like that. They really do take like the Calais Campbells and the Yannick Ngakoue is just kind of off the scrap heap and plug them in, and they just have career years no matter what. There is a little bit of a fear that Baltimore has added yet another player who is not going to be there in the critical weeks at the end of the season, but I'm just hoping this is just a fun Baltimore season all around now.
Yeah, I think the two things that you touched on, which I am in full agreement on. First off, one is I do think that this is the conclusion of the Lamar saga. Uh, I think everything you said was right. Where Odell wouldn't have signed if he didn't think that Lamar was going to be around, and I don't think the Ravens would pay him that much if they had question marks at the quarterback position. Right? If they didn't feel confident that Lamar was coming back, it seemed like Lamar was possibly. I saw some tweets and some rumors that he was involved in recruiting Odell, which I think you said. Like, it feels like something that this is the Ravens like olive branch of like, okay, we got you. We're like, we are investing in the wide receiver position. We're making sure that this is happening. Now let's really settle on some numbers and let's get this thing rolling. From a fantasy standpoint, I think Odell is going to be an excellent addition from a real football standpoint, fantasy wise. Like, this offense, until we like really see otherwise, I have a hard time picking anyone in this offense outside of Lamar, assuming he stays, and Mark Andrews. We had that 1,000 plus year out of Marquise Brown a couple years ago, and it feels like outside of Mark Andrews, you're going to get one other kind of maybe blow up receiver there. And is that going to be Odell? Is that going to be 30-year-old Odell? Is that going to be Rashad Bateman? Feels more to me like Odell is kind of like, and he has such name brand that I don't necessarily know he's going to make it down into this level, but like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, who maybe gives you a couple of flex weeks here and there, but really is kind of like a piece where in actual football, he makes, a couple of big plays to like help the Ravens win the game and give Lamar kind of another reliable passing option and help open up the offense for someone like Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews and J.K. Dobbins and whomever else they got to kind of be able to move, because Odell does draw attention, especially after what he was showing. If everything is looking kind of like the way it was with the Rams during that playoff run, and he's able to make a full recovery from that ACL tear.
Where would you draft him in redraft ADP now? Does he creep up? Is he? I don't know if he's in the top 2 rounds, and I don't know where he's at right now. I'd have to look it up, but
that's what I'm looking at right now. Let's see what's Underdog's ADP right now currently. It's going to take forever to load. All right. Anyways, I don't know where I would draft him in redraft. Wait, who are we talking about? Lamar or Odell?
Odell.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would draft him ahead of, I wouldn't draft him at anything more than my wide receiver 4, maybe at the best.
I think I'm at wide receiver 3 right now.
Yeah.
Like, put him in that flex spot, but I'm fully ready by the end of the summer to just have him all the way up at wide receiver 2. Like, I follow
if I see any kind of camp highlight reel of Lamar throwing bombs to Odell and Odell looking like, if Odell is running crispy slant routes on the goal line, then I could talk myself into an 8 to 9 touchdown season, and that's worthy of a fantasy investment. He feels like a guy who I would be, unless there's a lot of hype videos, maybe, I don't know, unless I talk myself into it. He feels like a guy who I'll be happily letting other people draft and maybe trying to pull a trade midseason for, if things are kind of clicking in the Ravens offense. Like, I'm certainly not drafting him anything higher than, I would say right now, nothing higher than a wide receiver 4. And maybe he has some flex weeks, but I'm not feeling super confident that that things are suddenly going to align for him and he's going to be like 1,000-yard receiver with 6+ touchdowns this year.
Yeah, I'm fully ready to get sucked in. I'd like going Baltimore. Full disclosure, Baltimore is basically my second team. Like, I have so much Lamar Jackson, Rashad Bateman stock floating around in dynasty leagues, and they're not in the NFC to mess up any of my Packers stuff usually. So unless they meet in the Super Bowl, that's the only time where I'm like, I'm a little conflicted. Would vote for Green Bay, but I like Baltimore and I like Odell, so I think I'm just going to end up talking to myself into overdrafting him. It's going to happen.
Um, was Todd Monken there with Odell in Cleveland?
That is
I
a
th-
great
I think he was, because I think so. Todd
question.
Monken, he was the Browns offensive coordinator in 2019, and then he was just there for that 1 year. It was Odell Cleveland, yeah, 2019. That was the last time Odell had 1,000 yards receiving.
That
This
offense
is what we were
didn't
talking about,
look
Jordan.
great.
We're already talking ourselves into this. This is already finding things that we're going to talk ourselves into.
Oh, Lamar Jackson can throw the football and Baker Mayfield can't. This is great.
Oh, we are already on cloud nine. I do think that's an important thing that like I need to check myself on, is that for so long the Ravens offense has been oh my God.
Wink.
Yes. And it's
Martindale.
all, yeah, Wink Martindale. And it's all been that run game. And it's all been like utilizing the running backs and the tight ends. And you're not having these like prolific, no, not Wink Martindale. It's been
Greg Roman. Sorry.
Greg Roman. And you haven't been, it hasn't been like this pass happy, super pass happy from a fantasy standpoint, like wide receiver reliable offense. It's been kind of Mark Andrews. You had one good year of Marquise Brown. But it's been a while since we've had kind of like a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 reliably out of Baltimore. And so it is worth noting that like they're going to be running a different offense this year, and that might open things up a little bit more. We might get a little more passing game. We might get, if that's something that Lamar is kind of like wanting to see, is more utilization of his actual, being able to throw the ball more, having that be more of the reliable part of the offense. Could I talk myself into a 30-year-old Odell who's been working out like a madman to get back into the league and was looking pretty good before he tore his ACL yet again? I don't know. I probably could. Watch. This is the problem, is that by the end of this podcast, Jordan, you're going to have convinced me that I'm going to be drafting Odell as like my wide receiver 2. And it's just, people will listen to it and be like, yeah, okay, wide receiver 4, that sounds good. And then by the end, they're like, wait, why? Pete has completely changed his opinion and nothing new has come out, despite the fact that he was setting a hard line. This is what happens when we just listen to ourselves talk, Jordan, is we talk ourselves into things. I talk myself into things. Odell, first round.
Well, for longtime listeners too, we've mentioned Todd Monken on here several times. He's kind of one of our guys that were like, he coaches a good offense. If he goes to this place, like watch a little bit of an uptick from the players that are going to be there, whether that's like Tampa Bay or the last team he coached on offense, the Georgia Bulldogs, helping them win a national title. I like that. The only thing that I can really recall from Greg Roman's offense is it's ground and pound. It's verticals on the routes for the outside wide receivers. Todd Monken is more about no huddle, tempo, getting down to the line. And with the speed that is already on this offense, I think that could be scary. And Monken is, especially with Odell, you want it. We saw it in Cleveland. Baker Mayfield trying to make all these throws. There were just some throws that he just could not make. And Monken wants to attack more levels of the defense than what Greg Roman did. So it should be interesting, and I'm excited to see what formulates out of this.
Baker Mayfield threw for his most yards in 2019 under Todd Monken. Did not have his highest QBR rating though, so probably.
And we're still trying to get him out of Cleveland, like career year, and it still wasn't like it didn't look good.
It did not look good.
You get guys that actually look good playing football and know what to do.
Yeah, he oh my God, he completed 59% of his passes, 3,827 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 21 interceptions. Didn't look great, but threw for the most yards of his career. So what's the most Lamar's thrown for in a career? Lamar. 3,000. He's only top 3,000 once, and that was in his MVP year.
Yeah, and then he had like 1,200 rushing yards on top of that.
Yeah. Can I put money that Lamar throws for over 3,000 yards this year if he plays with the Baltimore Ravens? I want to put money on that.
I think that should be an over/under in some sports book.
Right. That feels like a decently easy over. I think because he's been flirting with that. He's done it once. He's been around. He's been the high 2000s, 2007, 2000 or 2700, 2800. Last year was he had a shortened season. Yeah, I think he could do that. Damn it, Jordan. I'm not talking myself into Odell specifically, but I am talking myself into this Baltimore passing game, and it could be good. I'm certainly talking myself. If Lamar comes back to Baltimore, if that news drops soon, I am certainly in on Lamar having a big year. I feel like that could be coming. Anything else you want to touch on with Odell before we move on?
Nah.
Okay. As we approach the draft, we do have some other nice things, tidbits dropping. Obviously we had the Panthers moving up number 1 overall to get their presumed quarterback of the future, leapfrogging the Texans. And it seems like that might be Bryce Young. Seems possible. I thought I saw some rumor trains permeating on the Twitter sphere that Bryce Young might be the pick. But what we do know also was that Adam Schefter tweeted that at least 6 teams have inquired with the Arizona Cardinals about trading up for the 3rd overall pick, which presumably would be teams who are quarterback needy. Now, we don't know who these 6 teams are. Can we take a wild guess of who we'd like those 6 teams to be? Of course. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about which 6 teams we think should be the ones who are trying to trade up to get a quarterback improvement from both a fantasy standpoint, from a football standpoint. And of course, Jordan has gone above and beyond, whereas I just was like, I'll pick 6 teams. Jordan has picked 6 teams and tiered them. And so why don't you start us off, Jordan? I don't even know what your tier structure is. Do you have is it a unique tiering, or you just got your top 2, your middle 2, and your bottom 2?
Oh, it's unique.
Oh, hell yes. That's what we want to hear.
I have given them all definitions, and they are all based on different quotes from the movie Heat.
Oh my God. This is what A+ podcasting looks like, people. This is A+ podcasting right here. Okay, Jordan, take it away.
So let's just start off with I guess this might be the easiest group to start with, is the teams that absolutely should move up, and that they have the resources to do so, and that they should just don't think about it. Just do whatever it takes to get up to number 3 at a reasonable time. And I call this the Pacino "Give me all you got" section. So the first team I have on here is Detroit. I think Detroit is ready. They need to just take a look at their neighbors to the south in Indianapolis to see what can happen when you build a solid roster, but you don't make a significant move to bring in a young QB to lead the franchise. That group, that front office group in Indianapolis, this draft might depend on them coming out with a franchise QB. I don't think you want that when you're in Detroit, especially when you've done such a good job of building this roster to support a young rookie to come in. They have the O-line, they have the weapons, and they have the draft capital to make a move seem pretty easy. I think they can trump basically any other offer, unless some other franchise just Godfather Jamal Adams type trade offer. They picked up an extra first in the Matthew Stafford trade. They have an extra second that they picked up last year from the Vikings in that Hawkinson deal. So a package with a pick swap of the 6th and 3rd picks that would allow Arizona to also not move back too far. So they can still grab the blue chip defender that they want, whether that's Jalen Carter if he slips down, or Will Anderson makes it past 4 and 5. That would be great for Arizona, and Arizona just needs more picks. This is why they should trade this 3rd overall pick. So Detroit, I just think they're ready. They got to give those resources up, make this move now.
I like that. I didn't even have them on my list because I was just like, they can figure it. But I think that feels like a move, especially if Anthony Richardson isn't one of the top 2 picks. Like, obviously, it depends when this trade is happening. If we're assuming this trade's happening during the draft, then this feels like a move where, like, Anthony Richardson, who has all the physical traits you could ever want in a quarterback / NFL player, but maybe needs a year or a little time to, like, get his throwing mechanics down to pro ready, sit him behind Jared Goff for a year. And now you have this, like, immensely talented piece that you can just plug in whenever the timing is right. And you're right that this team is built for it, and is a team that, like, the NFC North is in flux, and, like, now is the time to strike. You've got, like, the Packers. Rodgers presumably is not going to be playing there this year, though he's still currently on the roster. The Vikings, Kirk Cousins is, like, going to make $1 bajillion, but is on the last year of his deal. Like, and then for the Bears, you have Justin Fields, but it's the Bears. There's no longer the, like, Packers sitting atop the list, or just, like, the NFC North is not locked in as it once was. And it feels like the time for the Lions to strike, especially with how their last season went and how exciting they were, and how things kind of were rolling for them. I like that a lot. Who's the other team up in this category?
Well, one thing to add to what you were just saying about the NFC North is I would take it a step further and say that I really generally feel like the Philadelphia Eagles are the only sure team locked
In the
in
NFC
to get back to the playoffs. Yeah, I think for every other team, I mean, San Francisco, if they have QB issues, Minnesota, I think they kind of had a very nice season last year, is a little bit of an aberration. Even teams like Dallas, like, stuff can go wrong. I think the NFC being so wide open right now is when you want to make this move.
Yeah, I like it.
But anyway, my second team is Washington, the Washington Commanders. I know that they've been saying Sam Howell is our quarterback, and he might be, but he also might not be, because Sam Howell was a 5th round pick for a reason. Washington doesn't have a lot of draft capital, so it might take another first next season to move. They have to move from 16 all the way up to 3, so it might take a little bit more than they're willing to give up. But the wrinkle in this is, if a new ownership group comes in, buys the Washington Commanders, they might be looking to make a splash. It was speculated that they could get in on the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes if a new ownership team came in, but it looks like he's just going to stay up the road in Baltimore anyway. This could be the next big move that they make, or at least something that they're like, hey, new fan base, look at us, we're trying here. Honestly, anything that Washington does in a positive note would be good.
Would be awesome.
They don't have to even make this big of a splash.
literally all you have to do is just not have a horrifically sexually abusive work environment, and you're already sitting pretty there as new owners. So that's not a high bar to clear. They were on my list, and they're on my list not just from, like, it makes so much sense, especially with new owners probably coming in. Also, like, can we get Terry McLaurin a fucking quarterback finally in his career? And I don't, I'm not saying that, like, we don't know. We are projecting in that, like, CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson or whomever is going to be one of the better, a better quarterback than anyone else, or Sam. I mean, who knows what Sam Howell is? But my point more so is just that, like, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, like, this is a roster with a lot of good fantasy talent, like, players who you could draft and have really good fantasy, could be fantasy productive if they had a quarterback who has the talent to actually spread the ball around and get them involved in an offense that could be explosive. And while obviously, yes, you never know what's going to happen with the rookie QB, but at least there's excitement there. At least it's not Sam freaking Howell. So this one also feels like this feels like a very clear, obvious. We're on the same page here, where it's like, yes, the Washington Commanders make all the sense in the world for moving up and selling the farm to move up, because you got new owners, and the new owners are like, we need to make a splash. We need to go out and get ourselves a quarterback, and they do just that. I'm here for it.
They also have a lot of talent on defense.
Yes.
So it's like the roster seems like it's starting to settle in, and it's almost a little bit I mean, Detroit's defense isn't as good as Washington's, but it's similar in a way that you have weapons on offense, and you have a Washington has a relatively good offensive line. The defense was ninth in total DVOA last season. If they could just have a quarterback, they're
Yeah.
not sitting in that number 10 spot in the hunt in the playoff picture. They're right in it to lead the division, I think.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. What's tier 2? Move us down.
Moving down. The second tier is teams that shouldn't trade up, but they could feel compelled to. And I'm calling this the Wayne Grow, I had to get it on, man, section. Sometimes you just feel like you have to get it on, even though the right answer might be to not do that.
To not get it on.
So one of the two teams I picked here was Minnesota. I don't think they should trade up, especially all the way from 23. A lot of this is simply because they don't have the assets or a roster ready for a young QB to come in. It would be really sexy to think about a big armed quarterback throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. KJ Osborne, like low-key had 90 catches or so last year. So he had a decent season. The O-line isn't entirely a train wreck as it has been in recent years. But there are other holes on this roster, particularly on the defensive side. So I think that they would do better to just run it back with Cousins for right now, because Cousins isn't washed. Like, he's a little uninspiring. He's not as sexy as Anthony Richardson being the best athlete to ever show up at the combine, but he's not somebody who is just a noodle arm the last season of Peyton Manning type of thing. Run it back. If you have a good season, that's great. If you have a terrible season, take a shot at one of the quarterbacks next year. Caleb Williams and Drake May, both of whom might have a better case of being better than any of the quarterbacks in this class. So Minnesota, I would just sit on your hands and draft where you're going to draft at.
Yeah, it feels like a move that I think if they maybe got further, it feels like a move that, like, maybe if they got further in the playoffs, then that's something that you get dicey, spicy with. You're like, okay, this is the piece that we need, and like, sorry, Kirk, but like you can only take us so far. But it's also the Vikings, and even if they traded up for like a great quarterback, somehow that's going to fail them, and they will like implode. So I think you're totally right. You stick with it. Don't do it. A team I want to add to this, and maybe this is your second team, I don't know, but the team, because this is the don't do it, but you maybe should do, or you will do it. Well, do I not want you to do it?
They shouldn't do it, but they're thinking about it. They might be making some calls to see what the price is.
Yeah. I feel like the Bucks could be doing this, and I would be okay with that. Is that your second team?
Yeah, that's my number 2.
Yeah, love it. Perfect. And this one I'm good with, because there's a lot of fantasy viable talent there to be taken advantage of. And it would be a big move, and it would be a big investment on the draft, but you're also like kind of still riding this quasi high of like being relevant and wanting to stay in that relevancy thanks to Tom Brady and to the Super Bowl. And you got a lot of pieces there. And so like, it feels like this weird thing of like, you're not going into the season with Kyle Trask as your QB. Do they also have Baker? Who got Baker? Did they get Baker?
They have Baker.
They have Baker. So that can't be your quarterback room. You're not doing that. That's not your quarterback room heading into 2023. So it feels like they could be this team that's like trying to make a saucy move to get a rookie QB that they really like, one of those top 3 guys. Or do they become like a team that's going to sell pieces? And at the trade deadline, there's going to be 300 articles talking about Mike Evans. How could Mike Evans could make every team better for the playoff push? All right, good. Look at us on the same page, Jordan.
Hell yeah. But yeah, I fully agree with your Tampa takes. The only reason I have them in this section is because I don't think they have the capital or the resources to move up, and it might end up costing them some of their good talent.
Devin White wants a trade. This is how they shoehorn it in.
that's another aspect of why I think it's why I don't feel like they should trade up for a one of these rookies, and maybe they should stay in put and wait for Will Levis to fall or something like that. But it Devin White wants a trade. Like I don't know. They didn't get a whole lot of free agents coming there, and I just feel like maybe the time in Tampa Bay could be nearing an end, and they might actually start selling off parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think they should, but they built the team around Tom Brady basically.
If they are going to go into 2023 with freaking Baker Mayfield as their starting quarterback, please sell off parts. Please send Mike Evans to a team with a good quarterback. Please send Chris Godwin to a team with a good quarterback. Please sell these pieces off so that they are at least not in the fantasy black hole that would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because especially Mike Evans is one of my go-to wide receivers in fantasy. And Bert, no barking. and I don't want to see him disappear from my fantasy selections. What's your third tier?
The last tier is teams I can see getting in on the action because their fans want them to do some sneaking around. They want them to sniff around this third overall pick. And you know what they say about action? Sometimes action is the juice. And that is this section. My first action is the juice team is Atlanta. You could argue that they should be in the top tier of teams that are just ready to go and add a quarterback, because
you can't tell me great. Desmond Ridder is going to be your QB1. I'm sorry.
It just sounds great when you have Kyle Pitts and Drake London and all these speed weapons, and you're like, yeah, let's get a speed quarterback. Like the fantasy started when again, back to Lamar Jackson. It started there because everybody's like, they should definitely be in on him. But I think by signing Taylor Heineke to some pretty decent backup QB money, that they're content with rolling out Desmond Ridder. I'm okay with that. I actually like Ridder coming out. I think he can provide them a little bit of something. I think the roster, the rosters just in general in this category aren't ready to go for one of these QBs. Atlanta is sitting at 8. They're sitting at 8 for a reason. They don't have to do anything rash here. Ridder wasn't a first round pick. But when we're talking about pick 3, we touched on this before. 2 of either Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, or Anthony Richardson are just going to be gone. And they just have to be really confident that if they're going to move up to 3, they have to be really confident that one of those 3 is at least better than Ridder. And you don't know which one is going to fall there. And you don't know if they're actually going to be better than Ridder. Ridder's only on his second year. So drafting another QB might give you a Arizona situation. And that's just kind of that ended up being a mess for everyone involved. I don't think anybody really came out looking good there. And the thing is, I would ride with Ridder for the season. There's nothing stopping you from taking a quarterback next year. Since he was a 3rd round pick, you're not like beholden to some sort of, we dropped him in the 1st round, we got to see what he has. It's not like a Mitch Trubisky situation. So if you're still bad, take a shot at Caleb Williams or Drake May next year. But for now, fix the other holes on your team because you have a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. That it certainly is like the flashy. It's not just the flashy move. It's the Kyle Pitts.
It's sexy.
It's the Kyle Pitts true threat move to go get a quarterback so that Kyle Pitts can succeed. But it's also just like, even with all the Lamar stuff where you're just like, go get Lamar. Why would you not? If you had the opportunity to go get Lamar, you should go get him. And the Falcons being like, no. We much preferred Deshaun Watson because, that was a thing. They're not, the Falcons aren't there ready. Like, they're not ready to win anything right now. Yes, the NFC South is kind of a shit show right now. And so, like, there's nothing really preventing them from maybe winning that and like getting a playoff berth and being kind of a wild card. but there's a lot of things that they need to do to fix up that roster and to shore up that team. And so, yeah, selling the farm or even whatever it would take to move up to 3 to get a guy, does that make a whole lot of sense? Probably not. But it does feel like something that maybe they are like feeling out. And it could be something, where we talk about this, like, or Schefter letting this drop. Again, like we said earlier, is that could this trade happen a la the Panthers, where it's like happens now and it happens pre-draft, or it might happen during the draft? Like maybe the Panthers do go Anthony Richardson and the Texans do go CJ Stroud, and suddenly Bryce Young is there sitting at 3. Like all of these teams are going to want to have done their due diligence so they can like put a package together instantly in order to move up and get Bryce Young. Or whatever selection. If Anthony Richardson basically goes in one of those first 2 picks, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud is sitting there at 3, and that feels like a far less riskier pick, or just like there's less of maybe like a curve there, a starting curve, than if Anthony Richardson is sitting at 3. Who's your number 2 team? Because there's a team I want to make sure we talk about, because I have a theory about what kind of quarterback they want.
Tennessee?
No, it's not Tennessee, but I also like Tennessee.
Yeah. So last one for me is the Titans. They drafted Malik Willis last season, but I think it was pretty evident to everyone in the building that they don't really want him as their quarterback of the future. They
Which
hired
is
a new GM.
devastating to me as a dynasty Malik Willis dynasty owner.
There was a lot of believers last year, me among them. I
was just like hyper athletic guy going into a team where like he could start. Sign me up. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. But anyways, continue.
Well, what's unfortunate is that it seems like he just went to a team with a coach that didn't want him,
right,
or doesn't want to have him on the team. Because from what I've been hearing is that like Mike Vrabel won the power struggle with the GM there, and is like he wields a lot more power within that franchise than just like your average head coach. So like having a new quarterback in the building might not be what he wants right now. Maybe he just wants to roll it with Ryan Tannehill. And looking at it from a fantasy standpoint, the rookie landing himself in this situation might just end up finding himself completely devoid of fantasy relevant pass catchers anyway.
yeah.
Treylon Burks, I'm not sure what he's going to be yet, if anything. Nick Westbrook-Akina is like their wide receiver 2 still.
Their roster is upsetting.
If AJ Brown was still there, I'd be like, hell yeah, they should make a move and go up and get a quarterback. Why not? But moving up from 11, like that might end up costing them Treylon Burks, or like it might have them like need to give up somebody who's pretty valuable to the team to even be able to do that. So that's why I added Tennessee. And one of the things too that I wanted to touch on, because you brought it up and it reminded me of this, is moving to number 3. There's not last time this happened was when San Francisco moved up to get Trey Lance, and we kind of all thought, oh, maybe they're going for Mac Jones, but really we all know deep down in our hearts they're going up to get Trey Lance, because why would they go up and get Mac Jones? At that time, we kind of had a consensus, though, of who the top 2 picks were going to be. Like, it was going to be Trevor Lawrence, and for whatever reason, it was just going to be Zach Wilson. Like, those 2 just got penciled in for months, and it did not change anywhere for anyone. This is not the case this year. We've had, like, at least for the longest time, it was CJ Stroud as number 1. He was going to Carolina because of that video that we saw. Now it's Bryce Young. It could be Anthony Richardson. Like, Anthony Richardson is getting a lot of there's a lot of conversation around Anthony Richardson right now, and I think he's going to go. He might be the first or second quarterback off the board, despite what we see in these mock drafts. So the uncertainty of moving up to 3 for teams like Atlanta and teams like Tennessee, it's like you have to be certain that you're going to get the guy that you absolutely want at number 3. You don't want to settle for the third guy on your list if you're moving up that far. If you had other guys that you believed in more.
Right. especially, and this is why they're in this category, especially if your team has a lot of other holes to fill, right? At 11, the Titans could go get one of the wide receivers, or they could get, like there are a lot of other holes that these teams could fill. Unlike, the Lions, say, where it's like the Lions are pretty set everywhere. Like, yes, you could improve their defense, but they're a pretty solid team, in getting that franchise quarterback piece, especially if it is Anthony Richardson, especially if you're going to assume that Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are going to be the first two guys, and Anthony Richardson, who does need time, can sit behind Jared Goff. Like, that's all great. The team, I have this theory, Jordan, and this is purely me wanting my team to be exciting and viable and someone I want to root for. I think that they wanted to get and I'm talking about the Patriots. I think that the Patriots, I have nothing to back this up other than what I wanted Justin Fields. The Bears leapfrogged them for Justin Fields, and they're like, fine, we'll take Mac Jones. And now Belichick hates Mac Jones and is trying to shop him and get rid of him. Maybe the Patriots are ringing about number 3, and they're like, all right, how can we get up and go get one of these guys that we want? Or maybe it's like, go get a quarterback for a little competition for Mac Jones and make Mackie Boy prove it. Go mac and cheese. But I just want the Patriots to do something saucy. I am all for moving on from Mac Jones. He looks like a fine starting caliber quarterback if you are wanting to be a fine starting caliber team. But I want a little pizzazz and some spice and some sauce. And Mac Jones certainly does not bring that.
I can see that if Bill Belichick is like, okay, quarterback X in this class, he gives us a better chance to win right now than Mac Jones, because I ain't got time to wait for Mac Jones to start getting better or to start improving. So I'm going to go with the guy who, Anthony Richardson. He's got some extra tricks up his sleeve, and he's going to start running the ball. It's like Bill Belichick is.
He did it with Cam.
Yeah, he did it with Cam. Like, I think he would do that. Draft history aside, like, yes, he drafts like random guys from UT Chattanooga and like just the most Citadel, I don't even know, but like just the most obscure places. But he's not above, I don't think, making the big splash that'll accelerate things a little bit quicker, because they haven't really built under the Bill Belichick era. They kind of just been sustained excellence. So I can see them not wanting to let go of that and being like, we're not building. We need to go right now. Let's get a guy.
And it seems to me, and I think the reason why this intrigues me so much is because you have two types of quarterbacks in that top 3. Like, you have Anthony Richardson, who's just like a complete physical specimen, and the tools are raw, but you could work to improve that. And maybe that creates a down year, like where you do have Mac Jones and they're competing or whatever it is. But Anthony Richardson brings something wildly unique to the table. And we know Belichick loves utilizing every advantage he possibly could have. And if he has the best athlete at quarterback position, he's going to take full advantage of that. The other thing too is that you have CJ Stroud and Bryce Young especially, who are both like hyper accurate, efficient quarterbacks. And that was what Mac Jones was supposed to be and is, but like had a regression last year due to, the offense was a complete shit show. You bring back Bill O'Brien, whose offense is that kind of like, hyper efficient timing. And if you have, what you're saying is like, if Bryce Young does fall to 3, is he out of the box upgrade on Mac Jones? I would say yes, but I don't grind the tape that other people do, but I would say yes. And so you then are improving at the quarterback position in an offensive style that you don't really have to change drastically. So it's an interesting one. It feels like to me that the Patriots, Belichick especially, could have something up his sleeve. And what that is, I don't know. Maybe it's just trading Mac Jones and it's Bailey Zappa leading the Patriots for 2023. Who knows? But I don't know. I feel like Belichick is really, really peeved about last season, and all of that should fall on him because he fucking made Matt Patricia their offensive coordinator. So like, blame's on you, Bill. But I think he's like, he wants to prove last year was a fluke, and he's kind of putting the blame on Mac Jones. Anyways, whole bunch of drama that I feel like is brewing under the surface there. And I think there's a domino to fall in New England. And if there's 6 teams, it's a lot of teams sniffing about that number 3 pick. Wouldn't surprise me if one of them was Billy B, but who knows?
Yeah, it could be a team that we didn't even mention, just like literally doing their due diligence.
Well, it could be, I mean,
so
like the Colts, if you get a bunch of rumors that someone's coming up to 3 and the Colts have to go up to 3 in order to get their QB.
Yeah, it could literally just be the Colts being like, all right, what do we got to do to swap one spot and make sure we get our guy? Because, yeah, Indianapolis, Seattle could be another one because they're right there at 5.
Yep.
If they want to make sure they secure somebody to back up Geno. I'm trying to think of some. Las Vegas could be another one.
Yeah, I had them. I had the Colts in Vegas written down. Those guys, I mean, the Colts feel like a team, definitely. Vegas feels like a team where you're like, they could pull that trigger, but you sign Jimmy G in order
I can't imagine Vegas has a lot of
capital.
I don't think they have a lot of like.
No. And I feel like you signed Jimmy G kind of with that, like, we're going to do 1 year of Jimmy G and then see where we're, like, it feels like if a quarterback falls in our lap, or maybe you take a, super jacked white boy, Will Levi. I don't know what his actual name is, but he got really jacked.
Is there a team on here that already has a QB, but you feel like could move up and send that QB they have into greener pastures? I wanted to be sexy and put Miami on the list, but they don't have their first, so I don't think they can move up.
Do it. That's an interesting one. I feel like they've like really now verbally have good. Also, Tyreek Hill's retiring in 2 years. I feel like that's mildly noteworthy. We'll see if that actually pans out and actually happens. Anyways, I feel like they'll
see. I don't know.
They've staked their flag firmly in the Tua camp this offseason, but maybe that would be a spicy one, because that one would be, you would have to move Tua in that trade to move up probably, but the Cardinals aren't going to take Tua, so maybe you would. Who's behind Arizona? Like, could you do? I don't know. There's no way that you would draft unless you do multiple trades. I mean, you could trade Tua. Maybe you trade Tua for a first round pick, and then you use that first round pick to move up. There we go, Jordan.
Trade Tua to Indy, just get all the way up to 4. I feel like that would be throwing their roster into shambles. I think throwing a Dolphins QB in there now.
Yeah. No, you wouldn't want to do that. No, that is a sexy pick, but that's a foolish one, Jordan.
The Jets, maybe they don't have a quarterback.
They don't have Aaron Rodgers is going to get traded there. Then they're going to trade Aaron Rodgers so they can go up and draft who they actually want.
Aaron Rodgers is going to hold Jordan Love's goddamn clipboard. That's what he's going to do.
That would be the most beautiful ending to all of this, is the Jets being like, actually, you know what? We're going to keep our, we don't want to give up a buttload of capital. We're going to go up and we're going to get a guy. And the Packers are like, well, sorry, Aaron. Jordan Love is our guy. And Aaron Rodgers has to just either retire or sit on the sideline and, I don't know, stare into darkness.
They're going to have the blue injury tent set up at all times, so Aaron can just sit in there.
I mean, that's what he was getting used to in his blackout retreat, was that he is getting used to dark confined spaces. 12 days of blackness, and he's still
both days. He was in there for like 2 days.
Oh my God. He's an insane person. Oh my goodness. Anyways, yeah. Well, that domino still has yet to fall. Hopefully it will at some point. Until then, I guess we said we weren't going to talk about Rodgers till it happened, but there's a little tidbit. A little something.
No speculation, just talking to shit.
No speculation. We're just talking about how funny it would be if he had to hold Jordan Love's clipboard. Cool beans. Well, that's all we got for you this week. make sure you rate and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice, and go follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself at PNM Rogers and Jordan at Jordan_Smith27. And of course, make sure you're checking out all the content we're putting out on nerdballff.com. Don't be missing Jordan's rookie dynasty rankings. He's got a mock draft there. All kinds of good stuff for you to get prepped for the 2023 fantasy football season. But until next week, my fellow nerds.